Welcome back to the Watchman. In the previous video, I went over the chronology and importance of understanding how the book of Ruth connects to the book of Judges, and how Ruth chapter 1 verse 1a, now it came about in the dark days when the judges governed, that this was a time of spiritual and physical parchment, where the Israelites were doing some very wicked things, sinning, and it was this constant cycle. And we have this beautiful story of Ruth put right into the period of Judges, giving a promise of hope and God's sovereignty over us, and basically using Ruth, who's just an ordinary woman, to do extraordinary things. So what I would like to do now is we're just going to go through chapter 1, and I'm going to highlight some of the important verses and people within this and significance of it. And I'm going to sort of entitle this Ruin. All right. The first chapter is Ruin. And you'll see right off the bat, I'm going to read Ruth chapter 1 down to chapter 1 verse 2. Now it came about in the days when the judges governed that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem in Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. So we know that there's this parchment spiritually, physically, because of the judges. We have Elimelech, who is the king. We have basically, they go into Moab, which the worship of Moab is grotesque. It's erotic, it's lewd, it's abominable, it's epitomized. It's everything that the Israelites should shun. And here we have Bethlehem, which is the house of bread. We have Bethlehem, which is, famined and parched, and they're going through this spiritual and physical famine of food. They're going to this idolatry nation that is just wicked beyond anyone's imagination. And they're there because they need food. We know that as the verses continue, that unfortunate events occur where Elimelech, Naomi's husband, dies. Her 2 sons, they took wives. One was Orpah in verse 4, and the other Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. But then in verse 5, we see that Mahlon and Chilion also die, and the women were bereft, sad, because their 2 children and her husband died. So basically, Naomi is beside herself. We go down to verses 8 through 9, and it reads, And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return, each of you, to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. Now, some things that I want to just kind of get out of the way here. Orpah means stubborn. Okay, so we'll see how she responds. We'll see Naomi, pleasant. Right? And then Ruth means friendship. And throughout the Old Testament, relations between Israel and Moab range from uneasy tension to outright hostility. You can look back at Numbers 25. Moab seduces Israel into sinful behaviors, idolatry, and things like that. 1 Kings 11:7, they build a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, in 2 Kings 23:13. So basically, Naomi is telling her daughter-in-laws, look, this is a wicked place. We don't want, you don't have to stay here. You have no husbands here anymore. Go back to your homeland. You don't need to be with me anymore. I don't need to worry about this. So we find then, as the chapter 1 continues, that we have a wonderful outcome here. All right? In verse 14, and they lifted up their voices and wept again. Okay? And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Now, one of the things that you have to understand in this little section that could also be called a story of loss here, where everything was just ruin and loss, that when she clung to her, it can actually be translated from the same root word as hold fast or united that we find in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, which is the attitude a husband should have towards his new wife as he leaves his parents. So this is previewing her upcoming vow that we will later read in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 to 17, Ruth's great declaration. Right? So it says, but Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. This great declaration here that Ruth gives shows just how her name plays out, her friendship. Because we know that Orpah, the stubborn one, did go back and left. And Ruth was left there to cover and help and be with Naomi, whose name means pleasant. However, things change, situations change, personalities, especially in a time like this, in a time of ruin. And verse 18, when she saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So they both went until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the city was so stirred up because of them, and the women said, is this Naomi? And in verse 20, she said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. And the word Mara is bitterness. So she goes from being this name Naomi, pleasant, to bitterness, because now she's lost everything. She's lost her husband and her 2 sons, which were to provide and protect her. And the men were so important to the family that she had nobody now. So she didn't know what to do. She was in complete ruin. Verse 22 of chapter 1, it says, so Naomi returned, and with her Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, who returned from the land of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. I want to spend a little time here because the barley harvest is very, very important as we look at this. The barley harvest lasted about 4 months in Israel, 2 for barley, which was typically through March through May, and then 2 for wheat, which was May through July. To appreciate the significance of this, we have to study the Feast of Israel, specifically Passover to Jewish Pentecost, or Shavuot, to truly grasp the connected importance in Scripture. As we know, the Passover was celebrated to commemorate the Exodus from Egypt and how God, Yahweh, passed over the Israelite firstborns. Shavuot was the Feast of First Fruits, but later associated with the remembrance of the law, the Torah, given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. The Shavuot is referred to as the Jewish Pentecost, meaning 50, because it occurs 7 weeks after the Passover on the 50th day. So when we look at this, this gives a time period of when exactly they're going back to Bethlehem. And the significance of them saying this, this custom, these feasts would be taking part. They would be getting the grain from the harvest fields. So people would be out in the fields harvesting this barley and wheat. And that is significant when we dive into chapter 2. All right. So some things here that I want you to just kind of grasp here with the idea of them being back in Bethlehem and Naomi changed her name to Mara, which means bitterness. Imagine the testing of faith in a time of a pagan culture for this young woman, right? We know that Ruth went back, right? She was a Moabitess, and yet she wanted to follow Naomi's God. Consider the witness that Naomi had on her and her family, and what that had to have made in order for Ruth to make this declaration to follow her family and her God. Their destinies are bound by a common faith. Now, Naomi remained steadfast throughout her trials. Even though it says that she was bitter, she never once blamed God or attacked God or was angry at him. Okay? The name change is not a complaint. It's basically a heartfelt lament. She understands that the principle of God's sovereignty in bitter grief. She still understood that God was in control, even in her ruin that we've read in chapter 1. Naomi knew that God was there for her. And Ruth, who saw this faith, was impacted so much that she said, she clung to her. She did not want to leave her side, to the point where she made that great declaration in Ruth chapter 1, 16 to 17. And we have this great chapter ending with them being together at a feast of harvest, where we will see in chapter 2 the resolve of Ruth's choices. So I hope you gained a little insight to Ruth chapter 1. We will be back next chapter, or next week, to look at chapter 2, the story of resolve, and a story of love. Until then, take care, God bless, and be strong.